Okay, I'm in the middle of nowhere for a wedding, so I don't have access to a printer, but I promise this is my real keyword outline. But anyways, hi, I'm Morgan, and today I'm going to be talking about sex trafficking and 3 different groups of people that it affects differently. So 40.3 million people are sex trafficked globally as of 2017, and 4.8 million people of those people are trafficked in America. Now, what if I told you that Houston is the largest sex trafficking hub in Texas, with at least 200 brothels, at least? Now, what if I told you that Bryan College Station is at a very high risk for sex trafficking due to its location in the Texas Triangle? And what that is we're here, we've got Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio, and it connects them all together and transports these women to different places. This is a very big and dangerous business that is happening right in our own backyard. A lot of people don't realize how prominent it is in everywhere. And sex trafficking is an industry, honestly, just disguised as modern day slavery. And it is growing. It is a growing global issue that affects people beyond the victim. And so that's going to bring me to my first stakeholder of this, which are the traffickers themselves. So they hold a very big financial stake in this business. In fact, they bring in over $150 billion a year. I did say billion, not million, because that's what I thought it was at first, but I checked a lot of places and it's billion. And that's one thing I noticed, that sex traffickers have an advantage over like drug traffickers in that industry, because unfortunately humans can be sold repeatedly. Unlike drugs, they can run out of their product, but unfortunately humans can constantly be found into this industry, which is how they make so much more money. And in the journal I found, it's called a 6-year analysis of sex traffickers, and the person who put on the study, her name is Dominique Sepowitz, and it basically, the study was about 1,500 sex traffickers and just their demographics, what they look for in traffickers, how they lure traffickers in, and stuff like that. But I personally wanted to focus on the money aspect of it, because that's where they hold the biggest stake. And she said that over half of the people she studied, so over 750, kept 100% of the money that the victims made while performing sexual acts. The victims did not get to keep any of it. And that just shows how much greed there is in this business, because you have women being forced into trafficking, and you also have women that feel like they have nowhere else to turn to. They're so broke they have to sell their bodies, and they're not even getting the money that they were looking for. And so, this is not only financial gain for the traffickers, but it's also easy access of power, which is kind of what draws them in. A lot of them like power. And while many of the traffickers, benefit financially off of this industry, unfortunately, there are other people who unwillingly have to become stakeholders in this industry, which brings me to the victims. These victims just have to endure so much life-altering trauma once they get into the slavery, and hopefully they're lucky enough to get out. But even after they get out and they're rescued, they still have to experience so much trauma. And I found a interview with this lady named Margot Gray. She's a survivor of sex trafficking, and she discusses her the physical effects that she has to deal with every day, which are visual impairment, peripheral neuropathy, which is like weakness in your limbs and stomach, and gastroparesis, which is just inability to very hard to digest, and just to name a few. And then she goes on to talk about the psychological problems she endures, which are post-traumatic stress disorder, and inability to maintain healthy relationships with those around her due to trust issues that these traffickers and other men have unfortunately caused her to have. And while it's great to hear Margot's story and be able to understand what she went through and, want to help her and others, but there's 40.3 million other people whose voices need to be heard. And that's why it's important that we're aware and can help people. And it kind of ties into the last stakeholder, where we have doctors. A lot of women get abused by either the men paying for her or traffickers, so that causes them to seek medical help from doctors and kind of to get their voices heard. That's what they're kind of hoping when they're there. In the article I found, there's a woman named Dr. Laura Lederer, and she did a survey of 125 survivors and their experiences with doctors. And in the survey, she found that 90% of the victims went to doctors to discuss circulatory problems, respiratory problems, depression, anxiety, nightmares, and feelings of guilt and shame. And 90% of those victims who went in for that said that the doctors did not ask them about their personal circumstances. They just went in, checked them out, prescribed them, diagnosed them, and then let them go. And that's the thing, these women just don't feel loved or anything at all. No sense of love, caring from their traffickers or these men. And so doctors are their only hope of sense of, because they want to help them. That's their only feeling of that. And so it's kind of, they want to get their voices heard. And I think it's important for doctors to be able to be aware of these women. And I think they can play a big role in that. Hopefully doctors can recognize that issue. But however, and end the cycle. However, this case, sex trafficking is still on the rise, and it is growing. It's still a growing global issue whose effects reaches beyond the victim and a variety of people involved, directly or indirectly, from the trafficker to the doctor and to the victims and people around them. And it creates a long-lasting effect, physical trauma and emotional trauma in the victims, puts a higher strain on doctors, and unfortunately affects the global economy through illegal activities and dirty money.